Pleasure Island was a man-made island near the Walt Disney World marketplace. Each night at 7 p.m, guests could pay one fee to come onto the island, and they were given access to all 6 nightclubs along with other shops and restaurants. Guests could celebrate New Year's Eve every night, complete with fireworks. But not everything in this area of the resort was a celebration. In this episode of We Love Attractions, we're taking a look at the downward spiral of Pleasure Island.
Come celebrate New Year's Eve tonight and every night on Pleasure Island. An entire island featuring 6 nightclubs and a variety of entertainment, from music and dancing to stage shows and comedy. And every night is a once-in-a-lifetime New Year's Eve celebration that spills out onto the streets. Make a night of it on Pleasure Island.
At least for some Disney Parks fans, the late 1980s and early 1990s were an unmatchable heyday for Walt Disney World. In retrospect, it's easy to see why. With a new CEO in Michael Eisner at the helm, Disney was gutsier than it had ever been before. Michael Eisner had big plans for how to use the company's 40,000 acres in Florida, and among the most spectacular was Pleasure Island. You see, Eisner began to notice a trend about guests visiting Walt Disney World. More and more people were leaving during the evenings to go and explore Orlando's nightlife outside of the resort. One of the most popular places was the Church Street Station, an area of Orlando that featured admission to multiple nightclubs of various formats, facilitating club hopping for a single priced ticket. It's no surprise that Eisner decided to capture the market himself with a new expansion of the Disney World marketplace. In the area that we know today as the Landing in Disney Springs, this new complex would cater to adults visiting Disney, keeping them dancing into the night.
Is this direct competition to Church Street Station?
No, I don't think Disney ever thinks about competing with anybody.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Pleasure Island officially opened on May 1st, 1989, offering guests access to multiple nightclubs for one single priced ticket. The backstory created by Walt Disney Imagineering is that Pleasure Island was based on the fictitious owner Meriwether Adam Pleasure, an industrialist and explorer who decided to move his family to Florida and start a new sailmaking and yacht construction business on the island during the 1920s through to the early 1940s. He enjoyed throwing parties for his employees and friends after hours, but eventually he was lost at sea. His sons failed at running the company without him, and the island was mostly destroyed in a storm. As the story goes, Disney would rediscover the ruins of the Pleasure complex and establish a nightclub district to carry on Pleasure's merrymaking spirit. Every night at midnight, New Year's Eve was celebrated at Pleasure Island with a fireworks show. This tradition lasted from 1990 through to New Year's Eve in 2005. Various nightclubs were offered at Pleasure Island. Videopolis East was originally the artificial intelligence lab of Pleasure Island, used by Meriwether's son, Henry, aka the mad scientist of Lake Buena Vista. Similar to its Disneyland counterpart, Videopolis East was geared towards teens and young adults, as well as playing new wave music. This club was for guests 21 years of age and younger. Although it was an original club on the island, a year later in 1990, it was replaced by Cage. Even with the new name, the club decor didn't really change that much. Cage was known for playing music videos on 170 monitors throughout the club. Only lasting about 2 years, Cage would finally be replaced by 8 Tracks. 8 Tracks was a 70s/80s themed club that would remain open until Pleasure Island's closing day in 2008.
John Burke and Carrie Folks and the Neon Armadillo Dancers.
Get in line at the Neon Armadillo, the hottest place around when we're counting it down.
Now from Pleasure Island, it's Countdown at the Neon Armadillo.
The Neon Armadillo was originally said to be Merriweather's greenhouse, filled with desert plants that he collected on his travels. When the building was rediscovered, it had been taken over by armadillos, hence the name Neon Armadillo. The Neon Armadillo allowed guests of all ages, but guests under 17 had to be accompanied by an adult. Advertised as a hot little cool-down saloon, the Neon Armadillo featured young rising talent in country music. The club was eventually replaced in 1998 with BET Soundstage Club, operated by Black Entertainment Television. The licensing agreement with BET Holdings Inc. was created before Black Entertainment Television was purchased by Viacom in the year 2000. Incidentally, Viacom owned networks such as Nickelodeon, which of course was a rival to the Disney Channel. Previously featuring a country feel with the Neon Armadillo, the BET Soundstage Club focused on R&B, hip-hop and rap music, also offering drinks and Caribbean food. The BET Soundstage Club lasted until Pleasure Island's closure in 2008. Pleasure Island legend claims that the Comedy Warehouse building was originally the powerhouse, later becoming a storage facility when Pleasure Island installed electricity. 6 years later, it became home to the Pleasure Island Thespian Players, which was founded by Merriweather's wife, Isabella. In a similar way to the island legend, the Comedy Warehouse turned this storage building once again into a place of theatrical performances. Originally featuring a parody show called Forbidden Disney, the Comedy Warehouse eventually switched to an improv-style club to keep things fresh due to a large number of return visitors. The Comedy Warehouse was an immediate hit with Pleasure Island guests and lasted all the way until the island's closing day in 2008. Mannequins Dance Palace, according to its Pleasure Island plaque, was the second building erected on the island in 1912. Originally housing Merriweather Pleasure's famous canvas fabrication works in the 1930s, this building was converted into a soundstage for Invincible Pictures and eventually into a design studio for various pleasure projects. Mannequins was a techno-trance multi-story dance club that featured a show-stopping revolving lighted dance floor. Human mannequins were arranged around the club and performed every night to synchronized music. This club remained a hit up until its closure along with Pleasure Island in 2008. Mannequins was another original nightclub that lasted almost 20 years along with the area. XZFR Rock and Roller Dome was originally known as Building X. You see, Merriweather was a UFO enthusiast and this building held his experimental X-Thing. The X-Thing was a super ambitious aircraft that could harness the power of wind. The XZFR Rock and Roller Dome was a two-story club that featured a dance floor on the first floor and a roller rink directly above on the second floor. The club's DJ was suspended from the ceiling and cast members were also on roller skates serving drinks to the guests. As you can probably imagine, the roller skating didn't last long. It was a huge liability issue, and Disney's lawyers weren't too happy about the situation. In less than a year, XZFR Rock and Roller Dome was reincarnated into Rock and Roll Beach Club. The new club opened on April 4th, 1990 and featured live local cover bands until it eventually closed on February 2nd, 2008, about 7 months before Pleasure Island's official closure. And finally, the one club to rule them all, the ever-popular, unbeatable Adventurers Club. Island legend states that this building was designed to house the huge personal library and trophy collection of island founder and avid explorer Merriweather Pleasure. It is said that this club eventually became the headquarters of Pleasure's Adventurers Club, who were his zany band of globe-trotting friends. When he vanished at sea in 1941, Pleasure's Club was sealed until it opened again for the first time in 1989. The Adventurers Club was not like the others on the island. On opening day, the club featured artifacts from Merriweather's world travels. The 1930s-style British Explorers Club featured a staff of memorable characters that were portrayed by improv actors. No theming was spared in this club, which is what made it so iconic to the guests visiting Pleasure Island. 3 times a night, the Adventurers Club would induct new members in the main salon. During the ceremony, members would learn the club's salute, which ended with the official greeting of Kungaloosh. In addition to the zebra mezzanine and main salon, the Adventurers Club also had a mask room and a treasure room, which featured curated artifacts from around the globe. The largest room in the club was the library. In addition to featuring books galore, the library also featured the main stage of the club that offered scripted shows and music that kept the venue alive. There's lots more cool things and hidden secrets about the Adventurers Club, and if there's enough interest, maybe we can discuss them in a future video. So if you're interested, please do me a favour and drop a comment on this video to let me know. The Adventurers Club closed along with Pleasure Island in 2008, despite its continuous popularity among guests. So with all of these fantastic offerings for guests looking for a bit of nightlife at Disney, why did Disney then go and close down Pleasure Island at all? Well, as it turns out, the answer isn't quite as obvious as Disney would like you to believe. Disney officials stated that the Pleasure Island nightclub closures were in response to customers who desire more broad-based dining and retail experiences, and to Disney's credit, that's exactly what we got when the Disney Springs expansion opened. But a few events happened over the years that might have played a bigger part in the decision to close the Pleasure Island area. Originally, guests would pay for a single ticket to enter the whole area and wander freely around the island, visiting any of the nightclubs or taking in the shows at the Comedy Warehouse and the Adventurers Club. Outside guests who were trying to navigate between the marketplace and the West End areas of downtown Disney needed a detour around the Pleasure Island area, and it wasn't exactly convenient. In 2004, admission to Pleasure Island switched from ticket only to open gate, allowing free entry for every guest who wanted to visit the area, or just pass through. Entry into any of the clubs still required a paid admission ticket, but non-paying guests were free to wander the island as they pleased. This introduced a number of families with underage children into an adults-only venue where alcohol was served openly. It also opened the door to local teens who abandoned the malls and used Pleasure Island as their hangout. According to Disney, their presence apparently made many guests feel uncomfortable. All of that, along with a couple of occurrences of criminal activity, led to a crackdown on gang-related activities in 2007, with Disney implementing a new anti-gang no loitering policy. An official Disney spokesperson said because of concerns of a rise in gang-like activities at downtown Disney, loitering or any other inappropriate behavior by groups of youths will not be tolerated. Over the course of a few weekends, Orange County deputy sheriffs issued 48 trespass warnings at downtown Disney, which resulted in lifetime bans imposed by Disney themselves. Around the same time, the Orlando Sentinel reported that a device similar to a pipe bomb was found in a dumpster at downtown Disney at around 12:30 a.m. at night. Fortunately, no one was hurt and no damage was done, except maybe to the trash can when police officers ripped it open. There was also a couple who claimed to have been kidnapped from the parking lot after visiting the area for the evening, and 4 athletic recruits visiting Florida State University were trespassed and banned from Disney for life in what Disney called a crackdown on loitering, but news media quickly labelled as racial profiling. One of the recruits was the son of a manager at Walt Disney World, and what I will assume as sheer coincidence, the lifetime ban for the 4 student athletes was quickly lifted. But the damage to Pleasure Island's public image was already done. To Disney, the writing was on the wall. The downtown Disney area and the crowds at Pleasure Island were spiraling downhill fast, and something had to change. Disney announced that Pleasure Island would officially close in September of 2008 to make way for new offerings. On closing night, Pleasure Island was packed. In fact, I remember I couldn't even get a ticket when I showed up for the event. Some guests even arrived that morning to ensure that they would be granted a spot for the iconic final night on the island. Pleasure Island's closing night was one to remember, complete with Disney bringing back the New Year's Eve fireworks, which had been stopped previously in 2005. Despite the successful night, Disney began demolishing buildings and breaking ground on construction the very next day. Very little references to Pleasure Island remain at the Walt Disney World Resort these days. Some of the most prominent ones can be found in the Skipper Canteen at Magic Kingdom. The Adventurers Club's president, Pamelia Perkins is the namesake for Perkins Thai noodles, which is described as being one of her favourites. Another food item is a dessert called kungaloosh, taking its name from the Adventurers Club's official greeting. There is also a book in the library titled Another New Year by author Meriwether Adam Pleasure. Two other books by him are titled Global Night Celebrations and American Prosperity Abroad. And finally, Meriwether Adam Pleasure's fez is also in the cabinet of sea fezzes connecting to the sea room. All of these references aside, there is very little evidence to most guests that Pleasure Island ever existed at Walt Disney World, but it will always spark fond memories for those guests who once enjoyed it so well.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll talk a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to invite you to hit the subscribe button for more insights into the history behind your favourite Disney resorts and attractions. Speaking of Disney history, did you know that Disney once operated an airport right outside of the Magic Kingdom Park that now sits abandoned and run down? Click the next video to learn more.